All right, hi everybody. So I am not a morning person, and I really struggle with my mood and my energy levels on days when it's gray and it's cold outside. So it wasn't entirely surprising when one morning last December, I woke up, I was exhausted, I was tired, my throat hurt, my head hurt, and I just chalked it up to a long weekend of travel and a lot of stress and the weather outside. Thought about staying home from work and staying in bed and resting that day, but I knew that I owed a lot of things to a lot of people. I knew I had a lot of work to do, so I went into my office. So did that for a few days, kind of operating at half capacity, and a couple days later I wake up, I'm still sick, still not feeling any better, and I decided that I would stay home and take a sick day. Texted my boss and said, hey, I'm not going to be in the office, I'm not feeling well today. So my sick day turned into me sitting on my couch, wrapped in a blanket with my laptop, fielding emails and social media, and still trying to do my job. This went on for an entire month. We were in the midst of an end-of-the-year hiring push. We were trying to get some things done. And so I would go to work sick for a few days, decide, oh, I'm going to take a sick day, not do it, not take care of myself, and wind up getting worse and worse. Fast forward to the month of January, when I'm getting ready to teach a big workshop at a conference. I have no voice. I'm on a heavy dose of steroids and antibiotics, and I'm desperately trying to feel better to teach this workshop. Something that really struck me during this last December was I went to this technical user group, this holiday party, where all the meetups were getting together. And this only happens once or twice a year, right? So it's like the party to go to every year. So I'm looking around the room at this party, and I'm looking around and I'm hearing people coughing. Everybody looks tired, and everybody's talking about their throat hurts, their head hurts, they're so overwhelmed, they're so stressed. And I'm like, why are we all doing this to ourselves? If any one of us had just taken a couple days to rest, we would have felt better. Instead, we continued to operate at half capacity, we continued to not take care of ourselves, and as a result, didn't take care of our families or our communities. So I spend a lot of time thinking about health. I've supported people through a variety of health issues, everything from a family member who was hospitalized in the psychiatric ward to a friend who recently went through a brain tumor scare. But going to that party and realizing that there were so many of us not taking care of ourselves made me realize that we needed to make a change. So I resolved to take better care of myself, to help others know it's okay to discuss their health issues, and to bring health conversations in the open. So New Year's resolutions, right? I go into the new year, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take care of myself, I'm going to get some sleep, I'm going to do some exercise, I'm going to eat right. A few weeks later, I'm sitting at my desk. It's a cold, crappy day, another rainy day, another gloomy, grumpy sort of day, chugging coffee because I hadn't slept the night before, and I'm getting this nonstop bombardment of texts and emails. The red badge icon on my Outlook and my Slack won't go away. My social media notifications are blowing up. And every 2 seconds, somebody's coming in my office. Hey, do you have that report ready? Hey, do you have that resume formatted? Hey, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I couldn't get anything done because I was so tired, so distracted, and so overwhelmed. So I sent this text to a friend of mine who also works for a software company. And for those who can't read it, he said his day was crazy and disorganized, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm just going to go be a hermit because I'm just done with people. Now, this is not my personality. I'm the type of person who loves to be around people. I want to be around people, talking with them, helping them do what they love. But that day, I realized that I didn't want to do the thing that I most love. I didn't want to help people, and I didn't want to be around them. So what got me to this point? Well, it had been busy. So that was me. That's me every day at my desk, working on things, working at my office. In addition to my day job, my calendar was full. I was doing conference planning. I was trying to write a talk, trying to take care of things around my house and make time for, family and friends and hobbies and things that matter in life as well. We were in kind of a crisis mode. We had a project that was behind at the office. We were in the midst of a heavy hiring push, and a colleague was dealing with a health issue that I was trying to support them through. And so as a result of all this busyness, that was my diet. User group pizza, whatever I could grab, whatever snack I could grab, eating at my desk. So does this sound familiar? This is our life, right? We've come to a point where this is what's normal. This should not be our normal. We should not have to sacrifice our health and our happiness for the sake of our jobs and our careers. but we do. And I've lost track of how many times I've missed a doctor's appointment or a workout or just dropped a ball because I was too busy and I couldn't commit to the things that really mattered. And there's nothing wrong with being passionate about your work. There's nothing wrong with occasional long hours. That's how stuff like this happens. I mean, the people who are organizing this conference are spending a lot of their own free time and effort bringing this conference together so that people can learn from them. There's nothing wrong with doing that occasionally, but when it completely takes over your life, it becomes a problem. And we don't have to do it. We don't have to completely sacrifice our physical and mental health for our jobs. We just need to figure out where to compromise. So before we go any further, I want to give you a little bit of an idea about who I am. I am not a doctor. I am not a lawyer. And I'm not a health guru. I'm not an expert on any of these things. I'm not anybody special. I'm just a person who works in technology and has a passion for helping others. I'm a talent manager for a software consulting company called Improving. We're based here in Columbus. I am a community advocate. I organize technical conferences. I speak at technical conferences. I help facilitate user groups as well. And I have ADHD. I was diagnosed in my mid-20s after this caused me some issues at my job. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I also struggle with some anxiety issues. So I'm not just coming here from an outsider's perspective. These are some things that I deal with in my daily life. And finally, I'm a firm believer that if we, as technical professionals, don't talk about our health issues, we're never going to be able to resolve them, and we're never going to become a healthy industry. So at a high level, when we don't take care of ourselves, it impacts us in a number of ways. We have things like weight gain, we get sick, we get achy, we start to miss work, we start to be less productive. Mentally, we deal with hopelessness, we deal with stress, we shut down, sometimes even destructive or harmful acts that people do to themselves. And when we're unhealthy, when we're sick, when we're achy, when we can't focus and we're so stressed out, we're not good coders. We can't make good designs, we can't elicit the requirements, we can't effectively communicate with our team members. We wind up letting our teams and our clients and coworkers down. More importantly, we let our family and our friends down. And it's hard to take care of others and nurture relationships when you're not taking care of yourself. Even more scarily, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can run into what are called chronic diseases. The National Center for Health Statistics defines these as diseases that last 3 or 4 months. Things like cancer and type 2 diabetes and obesity are examples of chronic diseases. And according to the Centers for Disease Control, 70% of deaths are due to chronic diseases. 86% of our national health care costs are due to chronic diseases. And the shocker is that chronic diseases are some of the most preventable if we just make the correct lifestyle choices. So neglecting your health, though, doesn't only make you sicker, it also impacts your team negatively. You're less productive. I mentioned working basically sick an entire month of December. And I guarantee when I was hopped up on cough medicine or cold medicine, I wasn't being as productive. I wasn't focusing. I was trying not to fall asleep at my desk. That's not a formula for getting things done well and not a formula for getting things done effectively. If you're sick, you're not a really pleasant person to be around. And your negativity can bring down the rest of your team. They can lower your morale and your team's morale. And guess what? If you're not very productive and your morale is low, your professional growth suffers because people want to work with people who are positive and productive. So this can harm your career advancement. The good news is that you can improve your physical health by just focusing on 3 key areas. And we've all heard diet and exercise, right? Eat healthier food, move around a little bit more. But what we forget is that there's a third extremely important piece of physical health, and that's sleep. So consistently making an effort to focus on food, exercise, and sleep will help you be more healthy overall. And the nice thing is this doesn't have to be great big actions. You don't have to go train for a marathon. You don't have to be gluten-free vegan. If that's your thing, do you? But you don't have to do that. You can just take small, consistent daily actions, and over the course of several months and several years, those things will pay off. So let's talk about food first. Love this quote, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So one of my biggest pet peeves is when food is labeled as good and bad. You hear about that guilt-free ice cream and sinless chocolate cake. Well, food does not have morality. Food is delicious, it's enjoyable, and it's a part of our social lives. The problem comes when we eat too many of the wrong things. Now, my office, we host a number of user groups, we host a number of meetups. So we keep quite an assortment of beer and snacks and pop on hand. Our selection probably rivals most convenience stores. In addition to that, I have a job that requires me to go to social events. I have to go to happy hours, I have to go to meetups, and happy hours don't tend to have the healthiest of food. So if I'm not careful, my lunch is pizza, a mini Snickers bar, and a Coke Zero, followed by a dinner of vodka and chicken wings. Which, I mean, that happens every once in a while. And that's okay every once in a while. But if that's consistently your diet, that's not good, and that has to change. So little things that we do to kind of help overcome this. Ordering healthier snacks and meals. So we order pizza for user groups quite a bit, but we'll make it a point to buy salads as well and load those salads up with vegetables. We will order, in addition to the candy and sweet snacks we keep around my office, we'll order things like string cheese and nuts and fruit and things that are healthier. Fizzy water's been great for people who are trying to cut out pop. At meals, just strive for some balance. If you want to eat the cheeseburger, eat the cheeseburger. But maybe to balance the meal a little bit better, get the veggies on the side instead of French fries, or take the bun off the burger just to help balance your carbs and proteins a little bit more. And for happy hours, just because it's a happy hour doesn't mean you need to drink all of the drinks on happy hour prices. Have one drink and then switch to a soda water or something like that. I'll sometimes just get soda water with lime. Nobody bugs you because you're not drinking. As far as they know, you're drinking a vodka soda, and so you can just drink your soda water and go on. If you're a user group leader, if you're an employee, and I know there are several in here, ask whoever orders your food to just provide some healthier options. When I first started doing the salad thing, I would order like a small individual salad for me, and people started asking, hey, can I get a salad too? And I was really surprised because I wouldn't have expected that people would want to eat a salad when they could have pizza. Now, if you're a person who buys or brings your lunch to work every day, there are some additional tips that you can do. Right now, one thing that's really trendy is this concept of food prep, right? So you go, and on the weekends, you spend time preparing a bunch of healthy ingredients under the assumption that you'll have healthier meals that you can grab quickly throughout the week. I'm not great at doing this, but sometimes I do. I'm pretty good at getting like breakfast stuff together, cutting up like a fruit salad or something, but I never quite focus on doing that. And we're fortunate enough that we live in an industry where, in some cases, we can maybe, for lack of a better term, throw a little bit of money at a problem. And so if you don't have the time or the inclination to prep food, you can go buy healthy options. I'll stop at the grocery store on my way into the office, and I'll buy stuff to make salads, and I'll buy healthy snacks to keep on hand so that I'm not tempted to order the first thing that runs around. And lunches. Don't eat lunch at your desk every day. Don't eat lunch staring at your computer every day. One thing we do at my work is we'll do a board game lunch every once in a while. And we'll all get together, we'll play a lightweight board game at the office, and it gives us a chance to socialize and get to know each other. And what's fun about that is then we go back to the afternoon and we're recharged and we're refreshed because we got some human interaction. And it just makes your daily life at work healthier from a food standpoint. All right, exercise. So, I go to sleep all the time with these great plans that I'm going to wake up at 6 in the morning, and I'm going to run 4 miles, I'm going to do a YouTube cross-training video. The following morning goes one of 2 ways. That alarm goes off at 6 o'clock, and I decide, I didn't sleep well. I'm going to sleep in another hour. So I reset my alarm for another hour, and during that hour, I don't even often fall back asleep. I toss and I turn, and I start to worry about the day ahead. Eventually, I doze off, alarm goes off, I hit snooze 3 or 4 times, and then, oh crap, I'm going to be late to work. I need to be at work for the 9 o'clock stand-up. So I'm running around the house, trying to throw on clothes, throw coffee in a cup, drive into work, hoping to God that I get there before that stand-up. And the whole day I start, and I'm just a flustered, stressed out mess. Now, the days I actually can convince myself to get out of bed and work out, I'm cursing at myself that first 10 minutes. What are you doing? This is stupid. Go back to sleep. It's too early to be up. But a few minutes into that run, or into that workout video, I got my music going, dancing along, the workout ends, I keep the music going, and I go into work just in a much better, more energized place. I already have my energy levels up, and I'm ready to tackle the day. But that's really hard to remember when the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and it's 30 degrees outside. So even if the workout doesn't happen, you can do things every day to help make sure you get more activity. Little things, taking the stairs and parking farther away, taking time to stand up and stretch, walking to errands. I love my Fitbit. If I get no other exercise, I'll at least get my 10,000 Fitbit steps every day. And for me, I always hear that you should treat your workouts like a meeting. Put them on your calendar, put them on your schedule. For me, my to-do list is actually as important as my calendar, so I will, depending on my schedule, I'll either put my workout on my to-do list or on my calendar. If it's on my calendar, it has the effect of it's an appointment, it's a commitment I made to myself, and it's something I need to follow through on, or it's something I had to check off of my to-do list. So just kind of prioritizing them and treating it like any other meeting will help you get more activity. And then there's sleep. We all relate to this sloth, right? You want to be a morning person? There's an app. It's an alarm. It's terrible. But there's this thing in our industry where we like to brag about how little sleep we get. We love to talk about, oh, I only slept 4 hours last night. Yeah, I only slept 3 hours last night. Good for you. Good for you. Sleep is the first thing we sacrifice so often because we feel pressured to get everything done. And we figure, all right, well, I can sleep 4 hours, drink an extra large coffee, chug some Red Bull. I can get through the day and I'll be fine. The problem is that we actually do need sleep. And this isn't just me making this up because my bed's comfortable. Science and medicine say that we need sleep. U.S. Department of Health and Human Service statistics on this. Sleep improves our brain function. While we're sleeping, our minds are processing the information and remembering the information we've picked out throughout the day. While we sleep, our bodies physically heal. Cells rebuild themselves. Blood vessels reveal themselves. Sleep helps balance the hormones, specifically the hormones that help fight hunger and balance out our blood sugar. And finally, sleep just helps us be more productive and more safe. If we're driving, when we're overly exhausted, we're not safe drivers. And according to the U.S. National Institute of Health, a lack of sleep actually increases your risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and depression. Now remember when we talked about chronic diseases? Several of those things, obesity, blood pressure, diabetes, are chronic diseases, preventable diseases. So sleep isn't just something that we can sacrifice. So how do you get better sleep? Common knowledge says you should keep a sleep schedule. Go to bed and get up at the same time every day. Realistically, that doesn't always work. You might have an event that goes till 10 o'clock at night and have to be up at that event at 6 o'clock the next morning. And so you can't maybe always keep that consistent sleep schedule. But what you can do is tell yourself that it's okay to sleep and that you need to sleep and give yourself permission to do that. No bright lights before bed. And this means no computers, no TVs, no cell phones before bed. The spectrum of light emitted by our screens actually signals to our brains that it's still time to be awake. So before I go to sleep at night, I spend a lot of time reading my Kindle, which is not backlit, or I'll put together a Lego kit or color or do something that is not interacting with the screen and not interacting with people because that keeps me awake. And you should limit or avoid alcohol, caffeine, or big meals toward the end of the day. Caffeine makes it harder to fall asleep, alcohol makes it harder to stay asleep, and the same thing with big meals. For me, this is something I prioritize. I know that I need 7 hours of sleep most nights. And I know that I can roll through a day or two on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, especially in this sort of setting where the energy of the conference kind of keeps me going. But I also know if I do that for more than a day or two, I'm going to crash. And if you're a person who goes to a lot of social events, understand how those social events impact your sleep. So some people, they leave a social event, they're completely exhausted, they're wiped out, they can go home and crash right away. I'm the opposite. I leave a social event and I'm wound up for an hour, 2 hours afterwards, to the point where I have set myself a curfew. If I need to be at bed at 11 o'clock, I will leave the event at 10 o'clock so I can go home and wind down because I'm so excited and so wound up from talking to people all day. So just know yourself and know what helps you get good sleep. So by taking the time to improve our diet, exercise, and sleep, we'll help fix some of those career-related problems. We're more productive. We're healthier, we're well rested, our brains are working better, we physically feel better, our morale is up, we're happier, we're more pleasant to work with. And guess what? That helps our careers grow. That helps us grow professionally. But taking care of physical health is not enough. There's an additional aspect of our health that's often ignored and that's whispered about, and that's our mental health. No one wants to talk about mental health. But guess what? Physical health issues increase your mental health. They can do things like increase relationship problems. If you're feeling sick physically, you might have a harder time having relationships with others. Physical health can make things like depression and anxiety worse. If you're sick, you're depressed. You can be more anxious. You're worried about what's going wrong. You're worried about doctors. Mentally, mental health issues can increase the risk of physical problems, increase the risk of relationship problems, and can affect your human behavior and your interactions. And I think one of the best examples of this is stress. So a lot of times we think about stress as there's a lot going on, and my brain can't handle it, and I'm getting emotional, and I'm getting overwhelmed. And stress in general, it can be motivating, it can be even life-saving in a flight or fight sort of scenario. But the problem is that stress causes us to have trouble focusing. And not only that, and not only does it change our mood, but stress also increases our blood pressure. And if stress is chronic, it affects our immune system, it affects our cardiovascular system, and our digestion. Now that's interesting, right? So stress, we think of it as a mental thing, as a brain thing. But that state of chronic stress can physically impact our body. Body and brain are not separate. And just like bodies can become ill, so can our minds. In fact, 20% of American adults every year will experience a mental illness. According to the National Institute of Health, this is a 2015 study. I haven't seen a more recent one, but it's 20%. So that means if you're on a team of 5 people, there's a pretty good chance that somebody on your team is suffering from a mental health issue. So what is a mental illness? The American Psychiatric Association defines it as a health condition that affects thoughts, emotions, and behavior. People with the same diagnosis can have different experiences. My family members or friends who have ADHD or who struggle with anxiety have it manifest themselves differently sometimes than it does for me. The causes of mental illness, a lot of times there's more than one cause. It can be genetic, it can be biochemical. Something can be perfectly fine until a life event or something in your environment triggers a mental illness. So it's not the same for everybody. But the good thing is that recovery is possible. But in order to recover, we need to take care of ourselves. So just kind of a few more statistics. 10.2 million adults have mental health and addiction disorders. Depression is a leading cause of disability worldwide. And 60% of adults who experienced a mental illness did not get help in the last year. And that number goes up even higher if you go into other ethnic groups and things. More importantly, if you're somebody who suffers with a mental illness or a physical illness, you're likely struggling at work. If you have team members who are, you may not know that, and you may not understand what they're dealing with when you could very well be helping to support them. So we need to acknowledge, treat, and understand mental illness in order to do this. So treating mental health starts with recognizing whether you're ill and getting the proper diagnosis. Run through some common signs and symptoms, so things like excessive worry, frequent mood changes, trouble doing work, trouble communicating. You're avoiding social situations. Usually you want to go see your friends, you want to go hang out with your family, but you just cancel plans, and you cancel things, and you stay home, and you stay to yourself secluded. Changes in biological habits, and yes, even substance abuse. Now here's where one of the challenges lies. A lot of these things are a part of daily life. Everybody has stuff they worry about. Everybody has days where they're having trouble doing work. Everybody has days where their moods are up and down. That's all normal stuff. The challenge is when this is consistent, when it becomes a pattern, and when it starts to affect your professional career. So in my case, I went through most of my life not realizing I was ADHD until at the time I was an insurance agent. And as an insurance agent, you have to follow a very linear process in order to quote and write and bind an insurance policy and get it in place. And for whatever reason, I was struggling with the following of this linear process. And I would screw up, and usually it would get caught before the whole process would go through. Well, I had a case where somebody's policy did go all the way through. They get in a car accident, and we come to find out that the coverage that they needed was not there. Unfortunately, it was something minor. It was like a windshield or something, so it was no people were injured. And also, fortunately, we were able to resolve that problem, but if it had been a worse situation, if somebody had been injured, or if we had not been able to resolve it, I was looking at a lawsuit, I was looking at the loss of my insurance license, and the loss of my professional career. Now, at that time, I had a family member who had recently been hospitalized. She'd been in the psychiatric ward and had come out with a diagnosis of, we'd always known she was bipolar. She also was diagnosed with a severe anxiety disorder and with adult ADHD. A couple years prior, another family member had been diagnosed with ADHD. And I'm like, maybe I should talk to my doctor and find out what's going on, because I know I'm intelligent and I know I can do this work. Why can't I keep my brain focused? Why can't I remember this simple process? Why can't I remember to take care of the tasks I've committed to? So I go to the doctor and we have a conversation. She gives me a diagnosis and gives me the knowledge as to what this disorder means, what happens when it flares up and ways to overcome and work with it. We tried one medication, that one didn't work for me, so we eventually put me on a different medication that actually helps me get things done very well. It helps me focus, it helps me be able to actually finish tasks one at a time, and it's been life-changing for me in a professional setting. You go through some therapy, you talk to your doctor, you talk to your medical professional, you do behaviors. This was one thing that fortunately I'd learned early on. I'd learned from my very early middle school days that if I needed to remember a homework assignment, it had to be written down. It had to be in a calendar, it had to be in a planner. I knew that if I didn't write stuff down, I wasn't going to remember it. And you need a support system. You need people around you. Now on the surface, if you look at this process, it looks like treating a physical ailment. A coworker of mine breaks her leg. Broke her leg, it was right around this time last year actually. She broke her foot. Oh, I hurt my foot. She goes to the doctor. What does the doctor do? Runs some tests, does an x-ray. Hey, you broke your foot. They give her an air boot, they give her some medication, tell her to rest it for a few weeks. Then she goes through some physical therapy to rehabilitate the broken foot. She has to change some of her behavior. She can't be a runner quite right away. And in the meantime, everybody's supporting her, everybody's taking care of her. And it was perfectly okay to ask my coworker how her foot was doing and how well she was recovering from that and how that was progressing. But if that had been a mental health issue, if it had been somebody who was struggling with maybe a new diagnosis of bipolar, it would have been uncomfortable. And it would have been uncomfortable because there's just this unfair stigma surrounding mental illness. Why does this stigma exist? Well, first of all, a lot of times mental illnesses are invisible. It's hard to tell just by looking at somebody if they suffer with something. It's not obvious like a broken foot or even something like wearing glasses or a hearing aid or something can be. There's a fear of the unknown, and I think this is huge, especially in technology. So in the tech industry, we live in a world of logic. We live in a world of black and white. We live in a world where problems are easily solved. But mental health issues don't always seem logical. I know full well that when my brain is on this anxiety rabbit trail that, okay, I haven't heard from my husband in 5 hours and it's snowing out and he got hit by a car. Like, I know full well that that probably didn't happen. But when your anxiety brain is running out of control, it's hard to manage that. And it's hard for people who don't struggle with that to understand because it doesn't seem logical. And the treatment for that isn't always black and white. It's not as easy as just saying, stop worrying. It's not as easy as saying, smile, be happy, just focus, just pay better attention. It's just not that easy. So we need to educate ourselves on what these things mean. Feelings are hard. It's hard to discuss emotional topics. It's especially hard for people who live in a world of logic and black and white and problem solving to discuss our emotions and our feelings. Again, this makes it harder and harder. And in some cases, you have people who've been bullied. You've had people who dealt with early life issues. For me, I was lucky in that I never really dealt with bullying. The worst that I had is I had a teacher who, again, I have trouble thinking in a linear manner. I was struggling with 9th grade algebra. And at the time, I liked math. I liked science. I wanted to work in a STEM industry. But I was having trouble grasping the algebra. I went to a teacher, and the teacher's like, well, I'm getting ready to retire. I can't help you. I can't tutor you. Like, this teacher just kind of discouraged me. So 14-year-old me, dumb 14-year-old girl, says, all right, I don't need math. I'm good at languages. I can do something else. So I still don't have necessarily the math and the logic skills that I would like to have because I wasn't getting the support and the help that I was needing. I also, a lot of times in young girls, ADHD doesn't manifest itself like it does in young boys. In young boys, you think of the kind of stereotypical, they're getting up, they're running around the room, they're being disruptive. That's often not the case with young girls. So what girls do is a lot of times we just compensate for it. Again, I selected kind of into languages and things that didn't necessarily require as much logic or as strict of a timeline. The other thing that I did is I knew that if it was going to take most people an hour to write a paper, I knew it would probably take me 2 hours or 3 to write that paper because I was going to get up and I was going to play with my cat and then, oh, I better throw some clothes in the washer and then I'm going to sit back down, but, oh, hey, what's outside? I'm going to go look. Oh, wait, I better check the news. Like, I knew I would get distracted, and so I wanted to accommodate for that. And I survived on that method all the way through high school and college. As I graduated college with a 3.9 GPA. You just select and you adapt and you learn how to deal with it rather than kind of overcoming it. So because that stigma exists, we're afraid to talk about our mental health. And we don't realize that this does us a disservice. So how do we overcome the stigma? First of all, just understanding. Understand that maybe the reason that your teammates keeps missing the stand-up that's early in the morning, maybe it's not because they're lazy. Maybe it's not because they're tired. Maybe it's because they're under a new medication. And that new medication is having a side effect that's making it harder for them to get out of bed in the morning. And until that medication kicks in and stabilizes, that's a problem that you'll have to work with. If you have a mental illness or a physical illness, and you're comfortable, talk about it. Talk about others. The more people see, those of us who suffer from mental illnesses and mental disorders, the more people see us out being successful, doing things in the community, and presenting ourselves as successful people in spite of something that we struggle with, the easier it becomes to overcome and the less stigma there will be. If you don't suffer, or you do, and you have a loved one who does, listening. And again, tough for engineers, tough for technical people to think about. Listening is not solving a problem. And a lot of times, we don't want the problem solved. That's not what we're looking for. When that anxiety brain takes off, I'm not looking for a problem to be solved. I'm just looking to be heard. But engineers, with their problem-solving mindset, this is tough for them. My husband is a software engineer. He struggles with this one. He wants to solve a problem. He wants to be like, okay, well, you're sad, don't be sad. He understands that that doesn't work, but it's taken us time to get there. So the best thing he does is when he recognizes that I'm having a problem, he says, what do you need? Sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes the answer is I need a hug. Sometimes the answer is I just need to vent. But it's at least given him a way that he can help me. What do you need? And then whatever it is I need, I have to state it. And we work through it from there. And finally, we just need to cut down on the fear. There's a fear of getting fired, and there's a fear of getting trouble at work. But a mental health diagnosis, an illness, can put us in a protected class. So I want to touch on how you talk about this from the legal standpoint. So under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you're not legally required to disclose a disability or an illness unless it affects your ability to do your essential job duties. But you might want to disclose it if you need that ADA protection. This prohibits employers from discriminating against you. If you don't want to disclose it, if you want to protect your privacy, maybe you don't bring this up. The problem is sometimes you need job accommodations. And under the ADA, your employer is required to give you modifications to your job, its site, or its processes that enable an otherwise qualified person to do their work. If you don't need accommodations, maybe you don't reveal this at work. Bringing this sort of thing up can gain some empathy. When somebody comes to me and tells me that they or a family member struggles with a mental illness, I, given family and friends and myself, can be empathetic and understand why they might be having a rough day and not jump to the worst conclusions. There is some fear of negative reactions, again, because there's this stigma, but ultimately, I think that's a risk worth taking just for the relief. that people know and understand what I'm dealing with at work. So there's a few different times that you can disclose this sort of thing in a professional setting. The first thing is during the interview process. Talking about this during an interview process is a risky proposition, put that out there, but it shows some honesty. It can open some conversations about overcoming adversity. The downside is that there is the potential for illegal, but sometimes what happens, discrimination. But sometimes, especially if you're somebody who had to take a couple months off to get treatment, you can explain that gap in employment by saying, I had medical treatment, and just go from there. Or I had a medical issue, I had a personal issue, I had to take personal time. And somebody in a hiring end, we don't judge that. It's no different to me than if somebody took 2 months off to have a baby. You know, that's just part of life. You had a health issue, you had to take care of it. You know, you had a sick parent, you had to take care of them. So be willing to talk about it, but you don't necessarily need to go into a ton of detail during the interview process. I think the best time to disclose this is once you've already started a job. You're afforded your ADA protection if that's applicable, and you're required to disclose your accommodations. It also can help because at that point you've had somewhat of a chance to prove yourself as a competent employee, and it can be more comfortable to wait until you've known your boss and shown that you're capable of doing your job. What you don't want to do is wait until you have performance issues. And I've seen this happen a few times where somebody has this track record of missing a stand-up and being late to work and having all these issues around just kind of timeliness and trouble. And we're starting to wonder, okay, well, is this person lazy? Are they staying up too late playing video games all night? What's going on? And we're starting to wonder if we need to take some sort of a personal improvement sort of plan toward it to help them and figure out what to do. And fortunately, that person comes to us and says, yeah, so I've had my medication adjusted, and it's making it hard for me to get out of bed in the morning, and this is something we need to work with. And we as employers are like, oh, okay, you're dealing with a medical thing. We can go with that, and we can work with it. And so we didn't have to go to this drastic situation where we assumed this person was being lazy and just not doing their job. So how do you disclose this? You really don't have to go into a lot of detail. You just mention that you have a medical condition and explain to your employer how it affects your work. It goes like this. Hey, boss, I'm ADHD, I'm diagnosed, I take treatment. What this means for me is that I have trouble remembering things. I have trouble finding linear processes. And this means that if you're going to give me a task, I need a minute to write it down. I need a minute to make a Trello card. I need a minute to make notes. Because if I don't write stuff down, it's not getting done. And yeah, I might, be doodling on paper or taking too many notes in a meeting, but that's because that helps me focus. And so just having that understanding and that conversation helps so much. You want to tell your HR manager because they can help you with benefits and your legal accommodations, and your immediate supervisor. And the University of Massachusetts Medical School actually has a pretty good extensive document that covers how to bring this sort of stuff up at work and how to have this conversation. And we'll talk here in a minute about another resource that really details into this information. So it's important to have your appropriate medical and your legal care, have your people that you can talk to, and definitely follow the advice of the professionals you're working with. But day to day, when you're struggling with health issues, it also can help to know, especially if it's the middle of the night and you're not sleeping, or you're having some sort of a problem, that there are resources that you can turn to online to learn more about what you're struggling with and to realize that you're not alone. There's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This is the largest grassroots mental health organization in the US. They're aimed at advocacy, they're aimed at public policy education, support, and mental health awareness. The US Department of Health and Human Services mentalhealth.gov website is actually a really good resource. I was surprised at how much was on this website. So it includes things like resources, it includes things like signs of potential mental illness, it includes things for children, people dealing with this in the workplace, and most importantly, it includes links and resources for people who are in crisis situations. The Mental Health Commission of Canada has a similar website. And the one that I think is really cool, and I'm so thankful that this organization exists, is OSME. Has anybody heard of open sourcing mental illness? Nope? All right. So it's a nonprofit. They've been around a few years, and they were founded by this guy, this web developer, who started by talking about his issues with mental illness in the technology industry. So they do a number of things. They do some advocacy, they do some speaking. They also have a couple ebooks that they sell. One is aimed at hiring managers, and one is aimed at employees in the workplace, and there's a third one that's aimed at, one's aimed at HR, one's aimed at managers, one's aimed at employees. And these are books that you can read that talk specifically about discussing mental wellness and mental illness within the tech industry. So really great resource to check out. It's one that I plan to start getting more involved with and volunteering for because I think it's important work to do. So if you take the time to diagnose, understand, and treat mental illnesses, what do you think are going to be some of the impacts of taking care of those things? You're going to be more productive. You're allowing yourself the accommodations you need. Your brain is working properly. You're feeling better. Your morale is better. You're a more pleasant person to work around. So you're getting more work done, and you're pleasant while you're doing it. Well, guess what? Your career grows. You grow. And notice that these are the exact same impacts that taking care of your physical health has. These things are not disconnected, and we need to stop disconnecting them. So regardless of whether you struggle with mental illness, physical illness, or both, there are also things we can do in our daily lives to make ourselves be happier and healthier. Self-care, fun, and family and friends are extremely important to life. Self-care is very hard to define without being redundant, without using the word self or care, but basically it's a nurturing that you provide to you. It's a mixture of little things you do to add to your daily life, as well as just taking time to be with yourself. And there's something called kind self-care. These are your little indulgences. Bubble baths, sleeping in, enjoying your hobbies. For me, I put a bunch of flowers up here because I love having fresh cut flowers on my kitchen table. So every couple weeks at the grocery store, I'll spend $15 and I'll buy a bunch of colorful flowers to sit on my table. And every time I walk past my kitchen table, it gives me a little smile to see those flowers. Something so little, but it adds a little piece of joy to my life every day. There's reflective self-care, prayer, meditation, journaling. One thing I've recently used is this journal called A Diary for Good and Bad Days. And it's a little journal. It's probably 3 inches by 4 inches. And it's got a page for prompts for like good things that happen every day and bad things that happen every day. No, it starts with the bad and then it gives you the good. And it kind of helps reinforce the point that, oh, these little things went wrong and these little things went right, and helps you see the balance of your day. And I did that every day for 6 months, and it just helped me gain some perspective into what was going on with my life. For some people, this is prayer, it's meditation, it's yoga, it's whatever works for you, where you take the time to think and reflect on your life. Saying no is such an important piece of self-care, and this one's a struggle for me. I want to do all the things with all the people, all the time. I want to be out, I want to be doing stuff, but I know if I overcommit, and I know if I do too many things, I'm going to get tired, I'm going to get sick, and I'm not going to do those things nearly as well as if I selectively choose. So don't be afraid to say no to things. And finally, if you need to, schedule time for yourself on your calendar. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and she was talking about how she had a standing appointment with herself once a month to go get a manicure and pedicure. And she would go do this with her friend once a month, and that was her thing. A friend of mine, he is bipolar, and one of the things that helps him is he plays soccer. He plays goalkeeper. And so he commits to always being on a soccer team because he has time for him to take care of himself, for him to do something that he knows makes him feel better. And overall, that just makes you feel better as a person. We forget how important it is to have fun. We're afraid to have fun. We're afraid that's for little kids. Oh no, I'm too busy. I'm too adult and important to have fun. We're afraid to look silly, and we're afraid to let go of our responsibilities. But the thing about fun and the thing about joyful experiences is that they're what make life worth living, and they remind us why we're here. So for me, some things I prioritize are my hobbies. I have never played soccer a day in my life, but I'm a huge fan of watching it. So I run a tailgate for a bunch of local soccer fans, and during the summer, if the local soccer team's home, I'm at the game, I'm tailgating, I'm hanging out with my friends, we're having burgers, we're having fries, we're having goofy conversations, we're having serious conversations, and we're forming deep relationships. When soccer season ends, we do the same thing around board games. Get together, hang out, play some games. The games, the soccer, the whatever it is, that's secondary. The point is to bring people together, to hang out and laugh and have fun, and form those relationships. And out of those relationships come things like, one of our soccer friends had to move this past weekend. She puts a call out on Facebook, hey, can some people come help me move? And most of us were older than her, and most of us are well beyond the helping our friends move phase of our lives. We're like, nope, we're gonna band together. She's part of the family. Let's help her with the move. Vacations and leisure. This is something that's super, super important to me. This is something that I prioritize financially, that I prioritize with my time. I love to travel. I love to daydream about travel. I love to reflect back on travel. I love to plan trips. So I prioritize using my PTO, which a lot of Americans don't. And when I go on a vacation, I don't overschedule myself. I don't try to pack in too many activities. And it's great because I'll come back from a vacation and I'll have experienced a whole bunch of new things, met a whole bunch of new people. That helps me be more open-minded. That helps me understand other cultures. And that helps me, learn a little bit about myself and maybe discover a new food or a new activity I like along the way. And finally, laughter. Super easy, super simple, but some days you're just having those days when you're stressed, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you can't do it anymore. This was me last Friday night. I was just tired. I'd been running a conference for 2 days. I needed a break. And there's this Twitter account called Dog Rates. And Dog Rates will post a picture of a dog with a goofy caption that makes no sense. And I probably spent 10 minutes just scrolling through this Twitter feed just to kind of give myself something goofy to laugh at, to just bring a little bit of stress relief and joy to my day. But little things like that. Another one, kind of my bad day little smile thing, is the opening scene of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, most recently, where like baby Groot's dancing around. Like, if I'm in a cranky mood, you can't not smile at that. And even if you're faking your smiling mood, that helps. It helps for a minute. It's not consistent, but it at least helps maybe brighten a moment of your day. And it's really important to have those happy moments in every day. And finally, relationships are so important. Your friends matter. Your family matters. Your family and friends can help you with goal setting and accountability. You're going through a process. You've set a goal. You're training for a race. You're going through recovery from something. Having family and friends to help track your progress along the way is helpful. Your relationships, the people in your life, they provide support in tough times. You're having a rough day, you need a friend that you can call. You need help with something, you need people that you can call. And they celebrate. You get that promotion at work. You get engaged. You hit whatever goal it is that you're trying to get. You want people to celebrate with. And you need to have friends at work. You need to have people at work that you can have strong relationships with that can look out for you. So when we're talking about health, we need more transparency. We need more empathy overall. The more we make it okay to discuss and prioritize caring for our health, the easier this gets for everybody. And sometimes during these discussions, advice is not the answer. Listening is the answer. Being understanding is the answer. Asking that what do you need is simply all that we need. The thing is that none of us lives in a bubble, and our physical and mental health not only affect each other, and they don't just affect us, but they affect our families, our communities, and our coworkers. So don't be afraid to take care of your own health and help others do the same. And don't be afraid to have these conversations and talk about these things. The end result is going to be a healthier, happier, and more productive technology community. Thank you.